Well, no, I can't see it or.
Are we ready to roll?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh,
All right. All right, hello, I'd like to call this meeting of the Madison Public Schools Board of Education to order. It is 7:32. And we can all rise. Second, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As per usual, we start with the school community session. Tonight's meeting, we have a lot of presentations, so we don't have our students here, but we invite public participation at this time. And we'll introduce that, please.
Yep, so we do welcome public comment at our meetings, whether you're joining us online or in person. We ask that you state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when your time is up. We're happy to hear from our community, but it should not be expected that the board or administration will respond. It's not a time for public discussion. If necessary, our community member will be contacted to follow it separately. If you're joining us tonight via Zoom, we ask that you raise your hand and you will be called upon. Do you have anyone in person who would like to speak? Do we have anyone on Zoom who would like to speak? Okay, thank you.
As stated, we have some presentations tonight. The first one is on our school's code of conduct. At which time, Dr. Cook, I'd like to.
Yes, thank you, Darrell Cowley. And so we provided the board with draft copies of the code of conduct. We last year started the process of looking at really some changes that needed to be updated based on law, and made some of those and shared that with the board. These are really changes to bring the schools in to our current structure, and that will last beyond the reorganization. So for instance, prior we did not have a code of conduct that covered preschool, and so we've added Dr. Battaglia as the principal and included preschool. We asked Frank Henderson and Kelly Spooner and Becky Frost and Elizabeth Battaglia kind of review that their code of conduct, and so we had not caught up with the previous reorg of the schools, and then we looked at all three together in terms of how these connected and flowed throughout. One major change, as you'll see, so the board received a copy that included the track changes. So one major change that you'll see is the board went to one discipline policy. From previously, we had policies related to specific disciplinary infractions or locations, such as transportation. But a major change was including one discipline policy. So this reflects policy updates. It also reflects the new school state bullying regulations that will also change again. I'm under the understanding, but it is these include the most updated regulations on that at this point. We've removed repeat references, so there's quite often throughout some repeated references on there. We have, I believe, for the first time in a while, had this reviewed by Shipman and Goodwin as well. So sure we're in legal compliance. As I mentioned, the principals reviewed each other's in as a team. The definitions you'll see, as we discussed earlier in a previous meeting, they may not all apply to each of those levels, but we do keep the definitions consistent to provide that consistency on there. I thank the principals for their work. These do not require board approval. It's not something that we typically had. We did not feel it'd be a great use of your time to have major presentations from this. So I'm open to any questions that I might have to bring some of those back to principals to get an answer for you. Also, if you catch any a typo or something you see is inconsistent, please share that with us. We're happy to make those corrections before we officially print that. But it doesn't, as I said, require board approval. It's just more of FYI that we wanted to bring those forward and make sure you're aware that we're making major revisions. Families receive these each year, start the school year, and they're signed off by the students at the high school level. Yes.
Is this now called code of conduct separate or the same as the student handbook?
Separate from the
Is that referred to in the student handbook or is it repeated in the student handbook?
some of it's repeated, but mostly it's referred to. Yeah,
And are these available on the website?
yes.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Thanks, so really small one.
Sure.
In addition of throwing. Like, what does that mean? Throwing, it's like ID
Oh,
throwing,
Throwing snowballs, rocks.
is that what that, I assume that's what
Yeah.
that means, that like,
Which means-
like,
So it's on
Throwing
page
something.
12 of the K-5, but it's not the same page number, but it's the same place in all the other ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to confirm throwing means like throwing an object at
Yes.
someone
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
school,
Yes.
that wasn't in there before, or is it somewhere else? Maybe? Sorry.
That's new.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure, I was just, that was the one thing that seemed to be actually a brand new item, so. Just curious, want to make sure. Okay.
So I actually had a question. Actually. So I'm looking at the K-5, page 10. And so like this is meant for the student, right? It's a student code of conduct. And so then I'm looking under sexual harassment and the let me just look at the exact. So under sexual harassment, it says number 1. It sounds like this is not geared towards the students. It sounds like it's geared towards like staff student relationship. And so I just found this one section where it says statements or other conduct indicating that a student's submission to or rejection of sexual overtures or advances will affect the student's grades and or academic progress or status. These are examples of the type of conduct that is prohibited. And so just the way that it reads, to me, that sounds like it's aimed at like staff. Or what I mean, like employees and not at the student, because I don't understand how that would pertain to a student.
Or a joint project, maybe, and the grade depended on cooperation.
I couldn't figure that out. Like everything else, could be for anyone. Like unwelcome sexual attention, but that's like anyone. But it was just that number 1, so I was like, how is that students and not employee? And I just couldn't, it just seemed a little oddly placed, I guess, and I don't know if it was, to be complete, or if that is some sort of in a statute, or it just sounded odd to me.
I think it's just that consistent definition piece that we use, and
Because it's in all the,
yeah,
it's just because I guess I just don't understand it because it's a student.
no, I agree that it
Code of
wouldn't
conduct,
necessarily
but
apply
it's-
to,
I'm not sure how that applies, but
but we can check with Shipman just to see if they recommend
okay.
we take that out because it doesn't apply, or is it safer just to keep it in because it refers to it, type, it's like that's listing examples. We certainly have a much more thorough sexual harassment policy.
Right.
For students and staff. And
Yes, we
public.
And then on page 11, I just had a question about the tardy to school. If this is the PK to 5, but it's, I don't know what page it's on the other ones, but they're all the same. So it just says, without permission of school personnel, I just, like, how does that pertain to like a late bus? Like, should there be some sort of provision in there saying like accepting? You know, because that's not really permission of school personnel, it's just something that happens, but it's not under the student's control if their bus comes in late for whatever reason, so. I don't know if that, like,
You mean the tardy to class during the school day?
tardy to school, page 11 on PK to 5. It's underneath that, tardy to class during the school day, underneath that says tardy to school.
So I would say that's something that falls under kind of the principal discretion. You know, they know that if the bus is late and they're unloading the bus in bad weather or something like that, or something happens, you could have a bus accident. You know, those students aren't
A
marked.
tree fall and close the road?
Yep, all those,
But I
all
think
possible, yeah,
the without permission of school personnel, that would be permission. of school
yeah, I
personnel.
think like the, you know,
Yeah.
principal
I guess I
recommends.
just thought the wording was.
I mean, I'll just bring it up anyway.
Let's do it.
We can. Oh, and then my question, so page 16, this is again, PK to 5. The last box at the bottom, where it's talking about sale or distribution of drugs. Or paraphernalia, blah, blah, blah. And it says first and subsequent offenses. And this is PK to 5, and it says mandatory expulsion with administrative recommendation. But if you look at Polson and compare the exact same thing, it is not mandatory expulsion. It's 10 days of suspension. And then maybe recommended for expulsion. And I guess I just wondered why. It's like the wording is different there when you compare PK to 5 to Polson, and I did hand says the same thing as and I mean just that's the wrong page, sorry.
Page 17 of Folsom, I guess.
Sorry, I read the wrong one. It was just a minute, there it is. Okay, yeah, so it says mandatory expulsion or PK to 5, but on page 17 under Polson, it says 10 days suspension pending expulsion
expulsion.
hearing. I'm just wondering why one is ban expulsion, but the other one is like pending, and I think hands is the same as Polson's, but I have to look.
You know, that might be an oversight. I mean,
They both have the language of mandatory expulsion.
Oh, it should.
Just that,
Oh, I see, they moved it around, it's not exactly the same, that's right. That's why I didn't catch it. And the same, okay,
Yeah.
same as for hand, so hand reads exactly as Polson's, but the order is different.
and there's no 10-day suspension in the.
Yeah, so I don't know if that was intentional or,
It probably is intentional because the only reason by law that you can suspend a pre-K to grade 2 student is if there's a safety issue. So that could be a scenario where the student continues to attend school while you had an expulsion. If we had, for some reason, we chose to go for expulsion on that, so that's why it's covering that language. It's covering that grade level.
And it's also worth noting for the full board or the public that distribution of drugs doesn't just mean sale, it just means handing something over or sharing. And that's a mandatory thing for state law, as I understand it.
so in PK to 5, there's no expulsion hearing?
In PK to 2, there's no suspension. We cannot suspend unless there's a safety issue.
Okay, but you can expel them. So that's why the word is different.
It may not happen, you know,
Yeah, it's not,
there's some discretion there by the principal and superintendent.
okay, and then. So, K to 5, page 22. Parking violation, it says not applicable, but under driving violations, there are, consequences. And
They haven't learned how to tell apart.
I just thought that was
We have a,
perhaps an oversight.
Yeah, I think we can change that to this.
so we have a comment.
And I think,
Clarification.
yeah, and the same is for Holden, where there's not applicable for parking, but driving violations. There.
It's driving violation because according to state law, any motor vehicle is anything with a motor, it's got an electric scooter, it's anything with a sail. So if a kid commandeers a golf cart, that comes into play.
Oh.
It's not necessarily a Volvo.
Really?
It's a dirt bike. That is a motor vehicle according to state law, right? So that's why.
But there's no parking violations, but there's driving violations. They can park wherever they want. They can park wherever they want. Oh my gosh.
There's no violation.
I love it. Okay, that was pretty much all I had.
We appreciate you reading.
I didn't know I did.
Like I said, if you see anything later, please share. We're happy to address it.
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Henderson, Ms. Miller, Becky Frost, Liz Talia for all the work they've put in revising these. So thank you. Okay, shall we move on to the, yes, next event? Well, next we're going to talk about safety and security and all the good measures that we are putting in place. We can only do this great thing, right?
So let's switch places. They're gonna join me at the table, Mr. Henderson, Art Sickle, and Bill McMinn. This is kind of a representative of a team of us that work on safety and security. And well, I'll do a lot of the presenting. I'll be calling upon them as we go through to help us out, and then it will be all hands on deck when we get just. We do have a little show and tell.
I forgot. I had to run back to the office.
I knew that was gonna happen. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so earlier this year, this request came forward to review safety and security. We have reviewed this as a board, I'd say about a year and a half ago as well, and had a executive session. It's also something we do a lot of work on over the summer, and so each fall I typically issue something, a memo to the town and to the citizens and the school community about the work we're doing, and this summer is no different. So we're excited to start some of that work very, very shortly. And I want to thank the board up front too. You know, I will say pretty much everything we've asked for in the realm of safety and security, we've received approval on and support from you on that, including additional funding, but also specific projects and increasing in personnel, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So we broke our presentation up into three real key components, and all these things come together to make a more secure school community, school site. We talk a lot about the social emotional health of our staff and of our students in our community. That's also, you know, a huge piece of this. But we're also going to talk about, you know, kind of some of the more concrete things like infrastructure, being security cameras, door locking systems, reporting apps, web filters, panic buttons, key fob access. You know, not a week goes by, I will say that there's not a discussion between you know, Mr. Sickle and myself about new, you know, apps out there or new technology out there that we're considering. Also, you know, when Bill and I work together, you know, anything we do out there in the school district, oftentimes the new construction or plans not only include like a beautification piece of it, but also a you know, big piece of security and safety is looked at. Personnel, this is, you know, in many ways the most important piece of this is training, not only training our staff, but also adding armed security, which is something that happened this year. SROs, which we've been, you know, extremely fortunate. We continue to have a great relationship with Madison Police. We're very fortunate to have them and, basically on speed dial for all of us, but all of our principals, really in central office staff that, anytime we need anything, we call and they come and support us. And then community preparedness. So kind of the, being proactive, the safety, and security plans that we submit to the state each year. Our safety drills as required by the state, but we go beyond that. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then also staff training that, I think Madison is leading the way in a lot of ways. So we talk about physical infrastructure. Bill McMinn is really our leader on that. So I wanted Bill to, kind of share some of the things that he's been doing recently, and I'll fill in any gaps.
Great, so first thing we have, of course, we put these door hardware into the schools, and you can see that it's just very clear, lock, unlock, lock, unlock. I mean, if somebody needed to secure the door, the classroom, very simple.
And so prior to that, there were places in our district that had locks where you have to lock from the outside. So you'd have to find your key, go to the outside and lock the door. And we know from research and from even just ourselves that type of fine motor skills is not often in place when you're in a crisis.
Yes, and Frank reminded me that these are just in the high school. The high school was receptive to this kind of changeover. The other schools have just buttons. We did change the lock systems at Jeffrey and Ryerson for buttons, because the locks there are not that sophisticated. They couldn't upgrade this. Olson were planning on doing this summer.
Yeah.
Same thing, just buttons. I brought the fancier ones because they're nice and I had the sample.
Will the new school have?
I believe so. I believe that's the plan.
And the button is a one push deadbolt. So it's very similar. It's just
It does say lots of them.
yeah, right.
Yeah, I brought the high school ones, which had the most, and that was the first one we did. Because they were the newest, it was easiest to do that. The other, we just had to retrofit them with some, stuff versus the other ones, we have to take the whole lock systems off and put new ones on. So, the Pulsion is our last one that we'll do.
Just
So,
all the classroom doors or all doors?
classroom,
Just classroom.
we migrated into other doors, but classroom doors were our focus, where kids will be.
Mhm.
We could go over the entrance, the sight lines, the door mags, we put those on as, just this last summer, we did the high school always had lockdown system, from day one, Polson, you have the new entryways, and so did, the Brown school. So, then of course, the new school will have it as well, so by 2025, all the schools will have it. Limited access to the front of the building, that's just part of life now, the building's locked down. Security greeters, and the additional cameras that Art has put up. All the classrooms have telephones, and the PA systems, we've even upgraded some of those systems this summer, make sure that they're clear and everyone can hear.
The camera technology has taken huge steps forward to the and so one of the moves we've also done is that front office staff and security staff have access to cameras and can go throughout the cameras outside the exterior of the building pretty quickly. So if they had a concern or they got a call that there was a concern, or as they're monitoring it, they may witness something that's a concern and be able to address. The radios with the direct connect is something that's recently been updated. So radios that we can, through just changing the channel, can contact other schools. So Han could contact Polson if something was happening at Daniel Han. They needed to let the administration know. We also connect with the police department.
Do teachers know all of, like, if they ended up with a radio, do they know what channel to go to for different schools?
So it actually does display on it.
Okay.
So it would, and then some of our teachers that are outside often, PE will carry radios. Yeah.
Not all the radios go to all the channels.
Okay.
We have some, level radios. Administrators can go to the different schools, not every radio in the school can, they can
communicate only with the building.
Okay.
If someone's got the P, they can communicate to the main office and everybody else will figure it.
Thank you.
I have a question about the cameras, but I don't know. The answer it here.
Try and then we'll tell you, if we can, yeah.
So the cameras that are mounted, like, can you move them to look, or are they just fixed, or just not a place to answer this?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there are some, what would be called, PTZ, pan, tilt, zoom, movable cameras. Those are actually more of the older technology. And we've just been trying to install multi-directional fixed camera heads that would, point in the right directions. It's better, I think, to have that, and it's been recommended to us that we have the constant, static view, but just coverage of as much as we can get.
I have another question. I know you said about the door locks on classrooms. What about the gym doors? Can you talk about that or?
Sure. The double doors, the two.
Yeah,
doors
like when-
Don't have,
They have regular ones.
they do have regular lock.
Oh, okay.
They don't have the singular
But
lock.
they have locks.
have locks.
They're key locks. They can be key locked. But the double doors have not, you haven't mastered the double doors and how to put a sophisticated lock on like that. We're trying, the first one, we're gonna pilot this summer at one of the schools.
Okay.
And we're trying to figure it out. The problem is it's not just the door hardware, it's the whole door.
Yeah.
And you have to redesign the door. And, we're trying to figure out what's the most appropriate way without wrecking the door and so it won't opens.
Right.
So it's not a simple fix, but we would have done it.
And just get on the cameras. You can go live on the camera, you can also play that. You can kind of go back to date and time and review if there was something that I didn't like, but I can go back in time or go live.
But all the doors in the schools lock. You can lock them all.
We talk about cybersecurity and technology. We do a lot of work for internal safety and also external safety. Art really takes a lead on many of these items, but some of this also, works with the principals in my office and Bill's office. I'll let Art speak to some of this.
Well, the web filtering securely, that is spelled correctly, that's the product name. It is basically a web filter, but it also has, it's cloud-based and it's also based on the Madison enrollment in our Google domain. And what happens is that that filter will follow students home with the Chromebook. So that as long as they're logged into one of our devices or into one of our Chrome accounts, the filtering will apply to them. The filtering also, there are some features that maybe Dr. Cook can explain a little bit about in the executive session. But it's regarding the, keywords and things like that that are searched, are being monitored for very specific types of keywords and behaviors. And there's a very sophisticated algorithms and also human intervention services from that company. So I think it's well worth what we're doing with that. The See It, Say It, Send It app is something that we've had in district for a few years now. It's basically it's an anonymous tip line, so to speak. It's an app that would allow anyone to join it, and they can put in an anonymous tip that will go to basically the police department, or it goes to Inside Security here now. We have somebody monitoring that in the school district. And that's again, it has some interesting things. It's a national product. And if you belong to it and you're driving through some area that uses this app, it's got some sophisticated geofencing so that if you set out an alert that something's happening at XYZ school. And you happen to be driving through that boundary, you would get it if you had that, if something, dangerous was going on.
So specifically for cell phones, it's not like,
This is
on
a
the-
cell phone app.
and it's for both Android and Apple?
Yes, and it's really mostly the anonymous tip usage is what it is. There was that presentation, FBI partnering with Daniel Hand. That kind of speaks for itself. The Raptor Visitor Management System, that's a system that's been implemented in the main office of every building. Actually, it's at the security desk at the high school, but any visitor has to check in. And it consists of cloud-based software and a small scanner and printer. And what the scanner does is you produce identification, like a passport or a driver's license, most commonly a driver's license. And it scans the driver's license and kind of goes down like a toaster and comes back up. And it will check a national sex offender registry to see if there's any active hits on somebody with that name and age, from the scan. We do also have some references to flags within our own student system that would be triggered. It's a visitor management system, though, not a student management system. So it basically also will issue a visitor badge, a visitor ID badge that would have a scanned picture from your license with print on it also. And it will be the official check-in and check-out. So each school has that, yep.
So it's my understanding that when you scan in at one school, that you're not, like, they don't share databases with the other schools, so if you go to another school, you would have to scan in again. Like you're not in the system,
Every time you go in, you have to scan in.
but I mean, like, it doesn't hold the information in the system, it just scans it and checks it.
It's possible, say you don't have an ID with you today. It's possible that somebody at a station can type in your identification information. And it'll bring up, if we have somebody in the system, it'll bring it up. But ultimately, every time you come in, you check in. And the best thing is if they have the scanned ID, because they're gonna print another one, but.
Just have a question.
Yeah.
What happens in a situation when the license is scanned and something derogatory or negative comes up? How do you handle that?
It alerts the main office, the person that's checking, knows we've let the, main office know. Depending on what the person's, purpose for coming to the school is and, what comes up, then we have to make a decision on whether they're gonna be allowed into the district or not.
Secretaries would communicate to us and we would get involved in the SROs usually, I'd say just, a non-combative way to just show them what the person continue to the building in any way, shape or form.
But it's clear when you put your license in, I've had this I've done this, so that they're they're running your name. It's not the district, but in a global way. Yeah, so we'll know when they put their license in with us.
Because I've done it, I did it at Jeffrey and it went through fine, and I went to Hand and it was glitchy. And it just kept not being able to go through, and I said, well, I've been scanned in at Jeffrey before, so am I in the system? And he said, there's no way to.
The schools are separated. But the data that we supply indicates the family relationships that are in there. It's not impossible, but each school has its own database for it. You have siblings, but then the parents are the same. Sometimes the parents aren't the same. Or there's a step parent or grandparents come and pick them up. It gets very complex quickly. There's a lot of relationships, and everything is all obviously for the safety of the kids, but without being able to anticipate everything, they keep it because you're taking this one student or you're there at Jeffrey School. That's it for Jeffrey. It's not going to necessarily transfer over.
So
It's one system for the district. It is.
Yeah.
But it does segregate the schools.
And so when I give my driver's license, then is it storing my driver's license information in the school system?
It's storing it in as a visitor, yes.
But then is it like deleted at the end of the day, or is it just kept forever?
I think it's kept for the year. I'm not sure when it gets deleted.
And so I'm assuming we have like lots of security around anyone accessing that information.
It's got full security for the inside folks, and it's a third-party system that has student data privacy agreements with us. And it doesn't really matter. It matters, of course, but it don't mean that. I mean, it doesn't, student data privacy doesn't necessarily apply to the parents. It's a visitor management system. It could be contractors that are coming in to do work. Could be, doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's involved with the student. But it's a pretty popular system. A lot of places have it. The key fob systems, I think most of you are familiar. You have to get buzzed in a lot of places. We've enhanced and done some additions over the past summer. Some of that was grant funded. And ultimately, there's about 50 doors in the district-wide that have electronic locking. And those are very interesting. It's quite a sophisticated system.
And the major advantage, obviously, between a fob and keys, and the district has been historically very good about not giving out keys. So I think it's something that going back a long time that the district has not given out keys to staff. But we can turn this off. And so if somebody had access and there was a concern, or when they lose it, yeah, that's a great example. That we're able to turn that off within a minute's notice, and that would no longer work.
And if there's no electricity and the whole system's turned off, how do you get in?
We have keys.
Yeah, physical keys.
Yeah, physical keys.
So the key fobs are like individualized, like when someone comes in, who that person is with that key fob.
Yes.
And in certain individuals might only be able to access during certain times.
Certain
Yes,
doors.
certain doors. Yeah.
And it's only to get out in the building. If there's some kind of power outage and people had to get out of the building, it wouldn't be a problem.
And then we've been participating newly with the Region 2 school security group. So there's some training that happens with that group. Personnel, as I mentioned, the board has supported our request for additional personnel. We just want to go share historically. So the district has paid for 2 SROs going back, even before 2019, but that's the year we're selecting because we've kind of moved forward from there. And then there was 2 security staff at Daniel Hand at this time, 1 at Polson, and an in-school suspension person. We put this person on the list because I think the board probably aware from budget presentations in the past, when this person does not have an assignment in an in-school suspension, they're used as part of our security staff. When they do have a student in school suspension, they're with that student in the classroom that day, and they're not available for that. So when we look where we stand today, again, great support from Madison police, and we have armed security. So 4 total armed security. Some of the non-armed security moved over to be armed security, because they were former police officers either in Madison or another town. We have added non-armed security as well, and then the in-school suspension person continues. So we've gone from 6 personnel, which really 5.5, I would say, because of the in-school suspension. We've increased them by 4. So a pretty significant amount of personnel for a district our size. We do have 6 sites, so the staff at Brown and Ryerson support TCLC, as well as our police officers who are part of the police department will stop in there pretty regularly, on their way to start a shift or end a shift. And I will say too, when we talk about 9.5 security, I will frequently go to a school and see a police officer that's not part of that staff, that they are, they recognize the amount of, people we have in our buildings each day, and they stop in and support, and they're, very, very friendly. It's great for our kids to have access to them and so, it's been, continued great partnership.
Have I thought? I would just be curious on a budget level and cost level as to how much the differential would be to move the 0.5s up to 1 at some point for the lower schools.
So
Don't
great.
get an answer today.
Great question. No, so actually, what this is partly is at Brown School, in Brown and in Ryerson, we have school resource officers who were working part-time prior to this school year. They have actually taken the half-armed security staff. So we came out of this better than we kind of ever expected. So they do not, change uniforms. They do not, return the police car. They stay in uniform, but they're
Okay.
the other half. So kind of they split their day.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, it works out really, really well, and they're connected with the police force. It's really great. And we're looking at ways to continue that each and every year.
Looking forward for when we change the school
Yes.
models, would we anticipate just shuffling them around or needing more or needing less?
I think that the potential that we would really look into heavily is a potential that we might need less with 4 sites, versus 6 really. And so I think that's something that we're going to be having discussions on, as we move towards that timeframe. So there's several committees that make up and conduct the work that we need to do as to keep our district safe on many different levels. So one is the district safety and security committee. So that's the 4 of us are members of that committee, and we meet really on a as needed basis, but certainly several times a year to kind of review major things going on in the district. And I will say that the people on this list have conversations throughout the school year, or anytime anything happens, we're responding and kind of doing an after action review on how things went. If there's a emergency in town. When we had helicopters at Polson the other day, everybody on this list was part of that discussion, and what do they need and how we can support. And it's great. When we talk about the Alice training, this was the group that really talks about how that we have a slide on that later, but this was the group that really planned how that was working. So it's kind of that high level stuff. Also the people on this list attended the FBI presentation we had at Daniel Hand the other day, and so it's a really, really good group to be part of, and we're fortunate to have that town connection throughout this. It's not as common everywhere where you have that support from the town in terms of our work on school security. There is a Tools for Schools committee that is run out of Bill's office, and this is really about being proactive in issues with indoor air quality, but it also does get into safety in our buildings. We wanted to include that because indoor air quality and safety in our buildings is a big piece of that, and keeping people safe and healthy is very important. That people on that committee have a chance to report right to Bill and other leadership in the district, any concerns and anything we can do. And again, it's a proactive group. There'll be times where Bill might be testing air quality and in response to something that may come up to support our district or making changes throughout. Also through our workers' comp carrier and required by the general statute, we have a safety committee that is run out of Heather's office in Human Resources. And so she has at least one staff member from a building, a school nurse, custodian, food service, director of HR, Gail is part of that. And director of facilities. And so what that will frequently cover is maybe there's a raise in the sidewalk that people are tripping on, or there's a spot when it snows that there's concern that people are slipping, looking at work. They're required to review any workers' comp accidents that happen in the district without names, but so that maybe there's something we need to communicate better to people to be aware of or not do. So there's a lot of information that goes through that committee, and I think that's a big reason our workers' comp costs have gone down actually recently, because we try to be proactive on that and address any concerns that come up.
And just, is that where the savings is coming from?
It's actually on our liability, but we have achieved workers' comp savings in the past too. It's more our liability insurance.
Okay, but we're not impacting safety in any way?
No,
Like,
no.
okay.
As we mentioned earlier, community preparedness is a big piece of our safety and security work. So we have required by the state that each school building have a comprehensive safety and security plan. We'll go over what's in those just in a minute. There are similar plans throughout the district, as you can imagine, but they're altered by each building based on age of the students, and also the physical makeup of the buildings. They're reviewed each year and submitted to the state. Proud that this year would have been a major review by the state of our safety plans. We did not receive any concerns on that. If we had not had those in order, our request for state bonding would not have gone forward for the new school building. So we kind of took extra attention, knowing that was going to get that extra review, and no concerns were noted by the state as we went through that process. Each year they're signed off on by the people on that list, so you can see it's pretty comprehensive. That the principal has to be aware of what's going on. They sign for their particular building. Jack Drum, as chief of police, signs on that. San Borough signs on these, and they review them. And I want to thank Zoe for her work on making sure those are up to date and submitted for the state. So what these address, these are the major areas, although there is some other pieces that are within this, but these are the major sections of those plans. And also we are required to submit the fire drills. Each year in June, we submit the dates that we conducted the required fire drills. So I'll go over that in a minute as well. But that's part of the plan. So our lockdown protocols are part of that, how we're securing schools if there is an issue, our evacuation protocols, shelter in place, reunification locations. So each school is required to have a location that if we were to evacuate the school, where are we going? Which is good to have in a plan. Public health and medical emergencies, and also transportation. So how would we transport students or staff if we needed to evacuate? So kind of those details. Each year the state adds some additional information that's required, and so we're as I mentioned, reviewing that as part of that bigger group.
When these drills are they all the same for every school, or
the drills that we conduct? So no, the total number required are, but each building will do some specific to them. So Hand has that system where they have an alert that teachers carry. It's a specific only to Hand at this point for the district, and they do a test on that each month. They will do typically more inconvenience drills. They will do their fire drill at different times throughout the day. When we do that at TCLC, it looks a little bit different. We're a little bit more intentional on when we have that, but we want our high school students to be prepared at any time, to be able to evacuate. Not that our other students are, but there's certainly more of an adult to student ratio. You know, at those other levels that they can support.
Are the PA systems tested to make sure that they're all working properly?
I believe they use them every day.
We do, yeah, we do a lot of work, and one of the things that came up was, you know, to make sure we can utilize the PA system, you know, in different locations during the building.
And the phones in all the rooms were,
Yes,
and that was actually a big upgrade. This year, we're able to use the PA from any phone in the school. So any, someone doesn't have to waste time to call the office to make an announcement. They can go on, everyone knows the code to go on to any phone and make an announcement.
Is that just, that's all the schools?
Yes.
Great.
That was a big upgrade.
That's
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
Cause I know that there were some issues with the PA system at hand.
yeah, we need, yeah, it was admittedly some work we needed to do, but you're not frequently. You're not frequently going to find Mr. Henderson in his office during the school day. You're going to find him running around the second floor or somewhere else. So if something were to happen, he's going to be able to go into a classroom and make an announcement. He's carrying his radio
That's great.
and getting
And
some,
all mechanical.
getting some steps in, right?
There's none of it's flawless.
So I wanted to share, you know, kind of outside of the fire drill, because I think the board's familiar, you know, kind of how the fire drills might work, but you know, a response protocol that we have in place for a minor bus accident to stay somewhat classic here. And we know it's a heavy topic and something we think about you know, a lot, safety and security. But so bus drivers know that, and they're in constant contact with their dispatch to the point of, if we have a sub bus driver, they sometimes will be contacting dispatch for assistance with directions in our town. So they're able to notify dispatch. They are, you know, extremely good because there's it's so easy for them to contact dispatch that that there's, you know, bus drivers not trying to solve something on their own. They're very quick to notify, and then you know, pretty much immediately ART's office is notified. They know to remain with the passengers, you know, and then, you know, exit the bus based on the situation. Bus company immediately notifies ART if ART is out. They're going to notify somebody else in his office or myself or Gail. Or Elizabeth Tagley. They have all our numbers. Later on, they're going to complete an accident report. So I'm notified. Principal of the building is typically the one to quickly respond to the scene. They unless there's some reason why they're told not to, they typically go right to the scene because they know the students well and are able to support if the principal was ever out. There is a administrative designee or an assistant principal at the middle school, high school level. But you know, if Mr. Henderson is out that day, or he's over at central office, he's going to get contacted here. But if he was out of the district on a particular day, there is an administrative designee, or Kelly Spooner is notified to support. If we want to get someone there with the students, then I'm notified, making that determination of when and how and what to communicate to the public. Gazoo has a complete list of pretty much any you know, incident that could come up, and ready to you know, share some information with me and get that out through our e-notify system. We right now, so a frequent, probably one of the most common reasons, not that it happens a lot, but one of the common reasons we'll use the e-notify system is if a bus is running late, you know, or if there's you know, an issue with a bus that we're notifying families. We're able to fine tune that to say bus, you know, 12, and the families on bus 12 and notify them. I'm notifying you, you know, on a situation such as this, and then responding to any immediate inquiries that may come up. In my absence, Gail is aware of this, and in Gail's absence, you know, Elizabeth Tagley would be one to step in. Art is, you know, also aware. Heather, you know, so we have a deep bench even in our small administrative team that have all handled this, you know, in the past.
A question regarding
Yeah.
bus protocol. So a million years ago, when I was in school, I remember doing bus drills where you would exit out the back. And I said, do they do those? Because to my knowledge, like my daughter rode the bus, you know, all through elementary school and middle school, and she never did one.
They are scheduled to do them in October and in April. And to my knowledge, they're doing them every year. We talked about it this year. So I know that they did one at least. But that is a drill where the kids get to experience
Going up
getting
there
out the emergency exit, getting back to the bus.
where the exits are.
And I will say, just like the training requirements for our staff increases every year, our bus driver training requirements have increased. So bus drivers are trained on how to use an EpiPen, they're trained on other medical procedures. You know, a lot of information that they have to go through before they're able to.
But does that responsibility fall to us or to the bus company since we hire them?
Bus company, but we communicate and supply staff, so unless I'm correct, I know we've used our head nurse to.
Right,
do that training.
we've provided some training for them at their request, excuse me, but they're responsible to get the training, and it's a great partnership that we have though. So we're able to provide that training for them. And it's an annual event, usually in the first week of school, or a couple of days leading up to kids coming back.
I just had a thought, does every classroom have a cell phone,
Every classroom has a landline.
a landline, so what about a cell phone?
No,
Have
no,
we ever thought about doing, I'm only thinking that way because if something happened with the landline. That. Each administrator, each teacher would have a cell phone so that. They can text or, I mean, I know they have personal ones,
Yeah,
but just
So-
a thought.
it's something like that whole concept is something I have actually ready for our executive session. That's something we wanted to talk about. Yeah, no, it's a good question, yeah,
Okay,
but yeah.
I didn't know.
We'll share that.
Doesn't every classroom have a radio or just the administrators too? Okay.
But if there was a phone issue, they can contact me, I'll just, but, you know, these were things that changed too, where. We used to go, put your cell phones away.
Yeah, and never want them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the cell phones
Right,
yeah.
On there. For that reason.
Yeah,
And I think, like, I know I was a school nurse and I know that I had every gym teacher's number on my,
yeah,
you know, cell phone and my administrators.
And I have not, you know, I can just.
Right.
send a message to everybody.
Right.
provided with
Okay.
the phone.
thank you.
So fire drills have changed quite a bit, you know, over the years. So there always was a state statute. It was updated in 2009 and has been added to even since then about who is called to a fire drill, crisis drill. And so we work closely with those other town agencies and invite them into our schools when we're going to have a fire drill. So it's not uncommon for us to have you know, someone from the fire department, someone from the police department that are on site when we have a fire drill beyond our SRO. And so they provide us some feedback when we report to the state. Each drill, there's a section that we are filling out to say, you know, were there any concerns? Were there any issues? You know, so there was, you know, a time that we found that it took longer to evacuate because this happened during the lunch wave. We gotta look at certain things that we need to address or something we need to do or clarify which way students go out of the building and how to report that when we do that. So minimally, we are doing one a month. Most a lot of months we'll do two. The principals will tell you. I mean, they look at days that are going to be better weather days. We don't purposely put kids out on the rain. That's not part of the. And I think they need to know. It's more, I think, the different times throughout the day that we do that, and then we are able to, you know, substitute, you know, in-school drill, so like a shelter-in-place drill or a fire drill 3 times a year. And so oftentimes we'll do those during the winter months. Not that we don't have fire drills during the winter months, but we do, potentially if substitute that, that's a good time to do that. And then like with TCLC, we'll do this morning and afternoon, to make sure both groups of students have that experience to be able to work. And as I mentioned, we have to submit that to the state every year in June. Okay. Alice training. So Frank was here when we brought on Alice training and is a certified trainer. We're very fortunate to have, as you can see from the list up there, a pretty healthy number of certified trainers. I know TJ and Brian or maybe Melanie as well were trained this past summer, but Frank and Kelly have been trained for a while.
Again, before I talk about Alice training, again, I've been in district a long time, we really appreciate those supporting building level administrators, parents, teachers, all that the board has done to improve and increase security measures. I remember years ago, me and me was talking about, we don't want an SRO in the building. We didn't want a police officer in the uniform, and we really appreciate the commitment this board and previous boards have made. Police training is it's active shooter training, and the acronym ALICE on the left, you can see alert, lockdown, inform, counter, evacuate. And I won't go into all the training, but really the philosophy has changed from being on the defensive to being on the offensive, and sharing information in real time as best you can. Accurate information versus using codes. That if you have a substitute teacher, they don't know the code of whatever that is. This is all about accurate information as best you can, and also adding in that component of evacuation, which I know you were a classroom teacher, you would never think of that. And the whole concept of it, you know this information and you can evacuate with your students safely, why wouldn't you? And that's all the ALICE training is about. All of our employees do an online training for an hour. Then there's in-person training, which is more of a PowerPoint presentation. And then we have practical experience, which here at Madison, we work closely with Rob Strickland and Sam DeBur. They do that with our teachers and our patterns, and we have makeup sessions. And it really is just a different way to look at lockdowns and information sharing buildings. And again, we use active shooter all the time, but we would apply a lot of these concepts just if there was just a stranger on campus or something. We want to get information out as quickly as possible and as accurate as possible. We may go into a lockdown and not barricade doors just because we know the situation's handled. We're doing that as a safety. Or we may have other language that's going to tell teachers who have set up their classrooms through this training, barricade doors or do something to that extent, based on real information we have. So Kelly and I got trained in 2000. We were actually in New York City for 3 days in late February of 20. We came back and the COVID broke out. We're in New York City. But we did the training. And then we brought the training here. So it's about active shooting, but there's so much more to this. Intruder in a building, not with a gun. It could be a custodial issue. It could be, so that's why all these things that you supported. Our bill, Greg talked about and supported to be able to run a PA system anywhere in the building and get information out in an accurate way versus this kind of, because that's what creates the stress and the fear is the unknown, right? And when you use vague language, people are not sure. And if you want to say, we have a situation in the gymnasium, okay, you're in the cafeteria with a group of kids, you may have a different mindset. So
Are our substitute teachers being trained on this?
our substitute teachers have not gone, are building subs, yes. But we have building subs and we have subs.
Okay.
Who just sign up for jobs, our building subs work daily, they are trained. Outside subs, we have not trained. Custodians have been trained, paraprofessionals, secretaries. And for a lot of people, it's a very, let's say, uncomfortable training, but it's, you know, and again, you know, Sam and Rob do a great job. The principals or the trainers, the people you see, they do the in-person training with larger groups. And then Rob and Sam do the practical experience. When we do that when students are not in school. You know, like election day or some PD day or something like that.
Students at the higher grade levels are aware of the training. I've heard some talk and,
They're not trained.
but they know what it means.
I have to, you know. have to
Yes,
check
that,
it.
you know, Polson and Daniel Hand, they've done some discussion of what the,
Yes.
language means.
So at the younger grades, I'm just thinking, so from my understanding at Olson or the high school would be, there's a whoever in the hallway by the gym. Would that sort of announcement be made at a Brown or a Ryerson? Or do you still use
Yes.
code words?
So I would use any code words because what we do tell the kids, or I tell the kids is you follow the directions of the adults in charge.
And so the
So,
teacher doesn't
yes.
have to figure out what code, whatever
Right.
it means.
It's
So you're
plain
using the same
language.
language, but the children are not aware of. You know, counter, all those things, they're not.
Like we wouldn't go, like, for example, if we have an ambulance come on site,
Right,
we would go into, and I would say that. I wouldn't say, you know, we're in a, we used to would say something like we're in a code yellow.
right, that was,
But now we would say, we're gonna continue to teach and learn, in classrooms, no need to lock doors, nobody in the hallway or the bathroom.
yeah, okay,
You kind of shut the building down, but right now, if you're a teacher, you're not panicked.
right, so
You
you're
know-
not saying necessarily there's a medical emergency, you're saying. Stay in your classrooms, you're dealing with something,
And we may say we have an ambulance on site, or we
Okay.
may say there's a medical
you
situation.
use your judgment.
But
That
we,
makes sense.
we tell our kids to follow the lead of the
Yep.
adults in charge at our level.
Got it. Thank you.
As Frank shared, this was an emotional training for some people. We saw some emotional reactions from staff and, you know, I believe certainly many that I talked to and, you know, shared with us after that they appreciated it. Like, I think no one said we didn't need it, that everyone, you know, understood why we're doing it. But I think, you know, teachers did not get into teaching to have to go through something like this or have to think about this. This is, you know, still, you know, it always will be, I think, very difficult for us to think about as we.
And everyone's giving me out that option to sit and observe when Sam and Rob do their thing.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's totally voluntary, you can be an observer, you can be involved. And they even do that when they do the training. When they train people like us, you know, certain scenarios are difficult for people.
So part of the training too, that they talk about, that they equip classrooms with certain materials. And so I asked Frank to.
Yeah, and you know, this, we have these every classroom, right? So every classroom. And so everybody has a white bucket and in it, there's just a few items. These are things that came to us from as Bill was saying, not every door locks. These would go on certain, what do you call that?
Door on closer.
The door on closure, so you would make it so you could not open it. So these are in every classroom, because we have a variety of rooms still. And at the end, where you don't see that lock. Although we're in really good shape in terms of being able to lock, it's just another layer. We have this kind of rope, if you really go through the Alex training, they want. If you can tie cord and set around the door, especially in middle school, high school, it's about getting the kids involved, when you have the older ones. And you would have the ability to secure that door, even if someone, you know. Could find access to it.
It's a lot of very strong rope.
So that's not to like rappel out of a window.
No.
It's to-
This, we would say that. Full teachers.
Got it.
But
Got it.
we're also talking about, and I mean, I don't know much longer share in public, but how we set up our classrooms.
Yeah.
To easily barricade,
Yeah.
doors, moving file cabinet, and things like that. But that would go on door handle.
Got it.
And then the counterpart, which again, you never want to get to, there's all kinds of tennis balls or lacrosse balls. If you ever really had to engage, that's a difficult scenario for people to think about.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, we have all these things on showing you that. Things in them.
Staplers.
Are they taught how to use the rope to secure the door handle?
Teachers, we talked about it in the training. Teacher, Rob and Sam do, that's the piece they do.
Are they cut open or are they like that?
You can just pull it and open it
Yeah.
up the rope.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't want to do it unless you need it, because then it's a big mess.
okay.
Our
She's thinking they're gonna be looking for a scissor to open
No,
up.
no, you just pull on this end and it'll uncoil.
And our big thing is, when you evaluate your building, that's cool, how your doors open, how you lock them. And then, you realize, oh, this door has to have a key and build some locks around, so all of our people at my building can lock their doors from the inside. And this is just another, this is in alignment with the hours training to have these things in classrooms. Just to be able to add another level of, particularly being able to secure the door,
And as Frank shared, through this training, we learned some things. So part of the training was, instead of the rope, you're using belts. And so our staff said to us, though, we don't all wear belts, so that's where the rope came from. So probably the quicker thing would be to take off your belt and use it on the door.
So they taught how to tie. Seriously.
Yes, yeah, those, yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
I swear.
Eyes work.
So as I mentioned, then when you get into infrastructure, every time we're doing something, Brown is a good example. Prior to, it was just the one door into the building. Now we have that vestibule when you walk in, and you have to fob in either into the office or into the school. Most times when people come into our schools, they're dropping off something just real quick. They're dropping off lunch, dropping off homework, they're dropping off something for sports after school or something like that. There's methods for them to just leave that and then go back to their car. It kind of decreases the traffic and the flow into the building. The CIP annually has $75,000. We added $75,000 to the budget 2 years ago. And then all those plan and cycle maintenance projects, as we went through CIP, the board and that committee know very well. We went through several iterations of the CIP this year, but the safety and security projects were always number one to our work on that. Air conditioning was a big one. We did a lot of air conditioning work, even on Ryerson in Jeffrey, because we know that allows teachers to keep the doors and windows closed and secure when students are in. I think a big win on this was our work with school security. Grant Art leads this work for us. He has since that started. A lot of information comes from Bill, obviously, to do that. But he's been adamant that every round we have submitted something. So even in the ones you see that we were not funded, oftentimes that was because other districts weren't funded in the previous round. So we've continued to submit that, and then because the board and the town has given us money, we have the money to match, because the state in this grant program does not just provide money. They always want to see that match. So we're making those dollars go further, and so I think that's a good success, of the district in terms of working through that.
When you apply for the grant, is it like for a specific amount or if it's for whatever they'll give you?
It's a process that includes identifying projects that you want to do. And the projects you generally have to get some reasonable estimates on what it'll cost, and you put a budget together essentially. And back in the first round, it was exceptionally detailed what they wanted for everything, and that was immediately after Sandy Hook. We ended up with a lot of different projects being funded on that, everything from the numbers on windows and some radio upgrades to all classroom telephones for grades kindergarten through eighth.
At the time, yeah.
Right at the time, and it would also include all the security cameras for Polson and Hand. So that was a very big one. And again, you know, our portion that we get reimbursed from the state is generally hovers around 28 to 29%. So we're paying for, you know, more of it. But it does make the projects go a lot further. So you end up putting a budget together with different projects. And you basically have to kind of stick within that. They realize that you're not able to get the exact numbers. And it's been a bigger challenge in the past couple of years with COVID, where prices have gone way up from the time that you've actually proposed projects. But it's always a challenge. They call them burden hours for a reason, I guess, right?
And I can at least speak to the last two times we submitted. We did submit for more, but that's what we were funded at. So we certainly, you know,
And they do go back to see, well, you know, Daniel Hand got this 2 years ago and Polson got that, so that maybe they won't do something. But they try to spread it out across the state.
So in terms of next steps for what we're looking to do, we've asked Madison Police to redo an audit. They have done this in the past, so that's ongoing. We expect that to be done, you know, in the fall, and so we'll have some response certainly to do that. Is going through a program that they would go to each of our schools and look at what needs to be done there. They don't hold things, and so you know, we've already heard some things that they've shared based on that. But then also, if they ever notice a concern, they don't certainly wait until the audit's completed to tell us. You know, as I mentioned, through the budget, we continue to investment any grant opportunities, anything that we see out there available to us. We have you know, worked closely on. We've, as Art said, you know, we continue to look at key fob locations and you know, is it going to make things safer by adding a location, or is it going to add a concern? So we've been very diligent about, you know, considering that, you know, when we have requests come from staff or principals on that. I mentioned air conditioner already. There is some great new technology in addition to what we already have that adds panic button technology to personal phones and Chromebooks and laptop devices that could be utilized. You know, the camera technology gets better every year, so we're, you know, now at the point where we're not just adding, but we're replacing, you know, some cameras that were, you know, originals to that. And also I mentioned too, the big piece of that is to have staff watching the cameras during the day, and you know, when they're on duty. And then building renovation and construction, that's always a big piece of that. You know, when Tecton is working with us on the new building construction, they're talking about safety and security, and they're you know, talking to Bill about the, you know, the common things that were already in place throughout the district, and sharing with us new pieces. They learned about Alice training through us and went through some Alice training, you know, privately on their own to make sure that they were on the same level as us. You know, so much of this work, I think, is notification to the police department. So how quickly can we get a hold of the police and their response time? And so our response time, we have checked, is always 4 minutes or less, based on the location of our schools and the location of police on duty. And so when I say less, you know, oftentimes, you know, especially this year with SRO and armed security right there, you know, we're very fortunate to have, you know, really almost instant response. But officers on patrol are typically able to get to our schools in less than 4 minutes, whether it's from, you know, where they're at, or even the police station. So that is our presentation. We know, as I mentioned, pretty heavy topic. We do have an executive session planned for us to share kind of some more about our next level of work in the district. And is there any questions there on that? But if you have any questions about what we presented tonight, we're happy to answer. See.
On this slide, you answered some of what I was looking at. In terms of audits. I think audits are incredibly important. You know, as you know, I travel around the state, and in my capacity, I go into schools, and I mean, although it has gotten better, I'd say, over the last couple of years, my experience traveling around the state is not good at all. You know, and they have the technology and they've got the training, but the human factor is huge. And, you know, between showing up at schools, you know, when the gym class is just done there running around and they're heading in, and I show up and people are opening the door for me, you know, or if you go to a school with a jacket and a tie, people will come to the door and open it for you. You know, so that doing an audit, I think is critical, you know, and I think it should be required on the state level. You know, at least a couple times a year in true audits, not audits when you've got a lot of number of the police and they're informed that we're going to do an audit on Thursday. You know, it's, you know, the human systems. If there's somebody walking around the building, are the systems we have in place, is there someone watching the camera?
Yes,
Does someone pick up on it? You know,
my guys have inadvertently walked around the building and not told the schools. And they're watching.
you know, and that's what gives confidence that, you know, if you build all this, but on a super nice day, is someone gonna walk around the back and there's a door propped open? You know, so.
Right.
You know, I applaud this work and I think it's really comprehensive. And people are getting, you know, being trained, and there's the drills that are critically important. But, you know, I can't underscore enough. You know, we have to test those systems with audits.
And they have a fire drill, does the fire department come?
Yeah, they typically are notified ahead of time and join us at the drill.
And they-
We always have the SRO on site.
Yeah.
You know,
Do you feel that you need more or additional like teacher training? Because I don't know how many times a year you do it, but obviously with anything, right, the more you practice, the more comfortable you are with it, the better things work.
personally, I don't think we need more teacher training. I think the vast majority of our staff, like other schools, our mindset has changed to where, you know, to your point, we can have all the buttons, you know, and all the technology. It is the human beings who see things and say things. And, you know, we don't have someone looking at the camera all day, but we have people who will just the eyes and the ears of the campus. Our security people do a great job with that, but things in place. I had, I don't even know if she came to see you today, Dr. Cook, someone bring up a concern they saw it voting, the school in session, even though we had the police on site. So it's the people who bring up the issues and concerns and the what ifs and can you check on that? So I think our mindset is in the right place. We're not paranoid. I think we have enough training, and I just think we just have to keep it, you know, it's a team effort. You know, no one person, no SRO. We have all the tools to communicate. But like you said, if you're not on staff, and we all wear our fobs and our badges, and I look like I'm a well-dressed guy to come to a meeting, I still need to go to the main office to check in.
And it's a culture, you know, that schools either have a culture or they don't around, you know, it's like. Being proactive and saying, if somebody doesn't have a badge on in anywhere in the building. That you will speak up and say something and ask them to go to the building or walk with them to the building. It's a culture.
And sometimes, and we had to change our culture, if you know, Brown and all, we would come in from the upper parking lot or the lower parking lot. And, you know, I made a decision with some other people, all staff enter the building through the main door. A little inconvenient for people to park up top. but that's the culture.
But then
you know.
that's it, right, and everybody, you know,
I hadn't really thought about voting before until you just mentioned that, but that's a whole nother issue, right?
that's why some schools don't have school on election days, is because.
Yeah, the referendum days are hard, a lot less people, but you know, our SROs are on site. And you know, I work with Kelly a lot, if we have an event. I'll get, you know, two of the guys, maybe even three for a certain period of time. And so we work together, she has an event, and voting was an all day thing where we had officer. Right at the exit the whole time. And it works because last week, I had a meeting with some construction guys doing the tennis courts. And there's a misunderstanding about who was gonna be at my office and who went out to the site. And we're supposed to meet at my office and then go as a team to the site. Well, half the guys showed up at the site. And of course, I didn't tell the school because they were supposed to be in my office. They were quickly escorted off the property.
Those are the things that give me confidence.
Yeah, yeah,
Those are audits.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, one time I was picking up or dropping something off in the box at hand, and my phone rang and I stopped to answer it. And I was on the sidewalk. I don't even think I was there 30 seconds before a police officer came out and said, you know, what are you doing here? You know, and I even pulled the board of that card. But I did say like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just dropping something off, but I'm on the board of that. I do flat, and he's like, you know, that's
Okay.
move along. Carry on, ma'am. You know. But I said, I'm glad that thank you. And it's a cult, like I said, it's a culture. It's like, doesn't matter who you are, or if somebody's walking. I said, sometimes people want to walk the track. And boy, they are out there, boom, like, no, I'm sorry, you can't. And
The Green Hill campus, which I'm on every day,
yep,
is very well monitored.
very well monitored.
Yeah, I mean, they know who I am,
Yes.
and I was walking around and I said, yeah, they say, we saw you out there.
Mhm.
You know,
They
I was
listen
in my
to them.
badge.
Yeah. And if you wait too long by that box, they call out to you like, do you need some help? Like, good, move along. Guess how this, oh, my older age. It's like,
Jeffrey, surprisingly, Jeffrey's probably the more active to watch. I don't know, they must have cameras too, someone's watching those.
Oh, yeah.
it's great, it's good.
Yeah.
It's really, really
In
good.
Brown School and I traveled to Brown School, there's always an officer sitting right there, somebody watching, we come on and off, and I wait.
Well, I gotta say, it's like 1,000% better than, you know, my daughter's a junior now, but when we started here, she was kindergarten. The security is greatly different than it was, and I'm very happy. Very.
Anybody want to see my,
Very nice.
I thought mine was nicer than Frank's, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything you do, Ava. Let us know what else we can do to help. Good stuff.
That was very good. Thank you.
Thank
Um,
you.
Well, at this point, I'd like to, get a motion to enter into executive session. Along with Dr. Cook to discuss security. Well, sorry, thank you.
Is there anyone online?
Thank you.
No, there's not.
All right, sorry.
I don't like to say my speech.
Right.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay, motion carries. We will now go into executive session.
We're gonna do the room back here. Yeah, thank you.
Ready.
We're ready.
All right, at this point, we need a motion to return to regular session.
So
Move. Okay,
second,
second, thank you, Steve, thank you, Diane. I'll dismiss the discussion, all in favor? Opposed, okay, motion carries 8-0, thank you. Our next action item is a motion to approve a very generous donation of $2,000 from the Bauer Charitable Trust to the improve the pollinator garden at Yanyuhan High School.
So moved.
So moved.
second,
Any discussion?
thank you very much.
No, but that's wonderful. Yeah. I love a pollinator garden.
Yeah. Great idea.
Yeah. Would be.
Right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. We have another very generous donation. So we need a motion to approve the $2,000 donation by the Polson PTO to support the Polson Middle School grade 8 trip to Holiday Hill.
So moved.
All right.
I second.
Thank you.
I love holiday.
All right, thank you. So once again, thank you to the Polson PTO. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. And it is now 9:35, so we have a motion to adjourn, please.
So,
Thank you. Second, Emily,
sure, yes, second.
all right. We are motion. All in favor?
Aye.